Hi there and welcome. My name is Jordan, and here I share my health journey along with research of lichen sclerosus. Today I'll be taking a bit of a dive into Barbra O'Neill's Self-Heal by Design book. This is such a good book, and it has completely changed how I view illness in the body, including lichen sclerosus. And so I'm really excited to share my thoughts on what the book is saying and comparing it back to lichen sclerosus. She does not talk directly about lichen sclerosus at all, but more so how fungus in your body leads to almost all health issues. So we'll get into that a little bit today. And throughout the video, I will relate back to what we're finding and how I think it pertains to lichen sclerosus. And then we'll do a bit of a recap at the end of this video. So again, I'm a huge fan of Barbra O'Neill. I love her videos. I use a lot of her tips and her tricks. Like when my kids are sick, I always do the onion on them. I even have them sleep with onion next to them. And so for me, Barbra O'Neill speaks a lot of truth of things that have helped my family. But again, this is her taking a deep dive into the root cause of most health issues, and that is fungus or mold. So I think it's pretty obvious. This book introduced me to the idea of having fungus in our body. I never thought of that before. I knew that sometimes like a yeast infection and that would be yeast in the body, but I never thought of fungus growing in the body and wreaking havoc. I guess we'll start this chat by going over fungus' role in like the outside world. And the role of fungus is to break down dead matter and turn it back to dust. And it does exactly the same thing in our body. And I guess I'll say, while we're going along on the book, I will share page numbers I'm referring back to if you want to read along. And I'll also share a link in the description to Self-Heal by Design. I know I actually got this book on her website because I bought a few of her books at the same time. And I think I got a discount that way. I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But it's also available on Amazon. But check that you're getting the best deal because sometimes they are priced higher than on her website, and sometimes, if they're used, they're priced lower. I don't know if it's available on Kindle, but you should definitely go ahead and check and see if you can get it for free. But let's start on page 14. And I should say, if you haven't seen some of my other book overview videos, I like to go ahead and highlight while I'm reading just key aspects that stood out to me. And in these videos, I share what I highlighted. And sometimes I comment on it, sometimes I just share the highlighted part, but that's how I like to do these overview videos. And so on page 14, she says, the overgrowth of candida in the intestinal tract causes damage to the gut wall, allowing subsequent passage through the mucosa lining of the gut into the bloodstream. This basically means that yeast can poke holes in the intestines, allowing the yeast and partially digested food to enter the bloodstream. Because the white blood cells consider these as enemies, this is one of the causes of many autoimmune diseases. So this already had me thinking, lichen sclerosus is an autoimmune disorder. So candida could be like the root cause of having an autoimmune disorder, and lichen sclerosus is. So I thought, that's interesting. What else am I going to learn in this book? And I actually learned quite a bit. On page 12, she is giving us an overview of the role of mold and fungus in the world. And she says, understanding the role of bacteria, fungus, and yeast in nature gives us an indication of how these can affect humans. As we have already acknowledged, have their two main roles, saprophytes and parasites. Saprophytes feed off dead organisms. This includes any area in the human body that sustains damage from poisoning or trauma, creating an environment conducive for fungus growth. Okay, that makes sense for lichen sclerosus. Okay, and then parasites feed off living organisms. Fungi are able to live in the human body, feeding off its tissues. That's really interesting too, I thought. And then on page 22, she's defining the fungi palette in the human body. And number 1 is what we'll be talking about. And it says, as exterminators, the role of fungus on planet Earth is to clear dead and decaying matter. Anywhere in the body where cell damage / death is occurring, these microforms, bacteria, fungi, and yeast will be. So learning that the role of fungus is to break down dead matter and cells and turn it back to dust. This is total speculation, but this had me thinking about, and so if something is breaking down by fusing, adhesion, and absorption, and when comparing to the role of fungus, seemed really similar. So if the tissue is damaged and not doing well, it one creates an environment for that to live, and then it is acting out its role by breaking down those tissues by absorbing. That's just speculation, but to me that seemed like, oh my goodness, I think there is a big connection between lichen sclerosus and actually fungus or mold in the body. So in some ways I feel like fungus is the root cause of having the autoimmune disorder because of the holes it puts in the gut lining, which is breaking down the immune system and causing an immune disorder. And then also, I think it is acting out its role in a flare by causing the fusion, by doing its main job of breaking down dead cells and bringing it back to dust, or just, like absorbing. So clearly I don't have like a full picture view, but that's something I thought was really important to share, especially as people are doing their own research and doctors are researching. If they come across this video, I hope that they would look into fungus and its relationship to lichen sclerosus, because I think there could be a key there. Further along on page 31, 30 and 31, she's going over Dr. White's amazing research into cancer and fungus and the connection there. In that section, he's also explaining how fungus can store in the body for a long period of time and is activated at certain moments. So going into that, I'm going to read this part of the paragraph, and it says, once inside the body, the fungus spores shed their protective cell walls in order to use human cells as sacs. These egg spores can lay dormant in nature or inside the human body for years. There are a number of dormancy breakers that can cause spore reproduction. The availability of fungus's favorite food, sugar, and a high carbohydrate diet, or antibiotics, or depressed immune system, or certain hormones. And then a little later it says, fungus and disease thrive in an acid pH. Now we're going to skip all the way to 83, and I'm going to read this section and then I'm going to tie it back to what we were just reading about Dr. White's research with fungus. And on 83 it says, an easy way to remember is if something has an acidic pH, it is like saying it is hot and fast. Alkaline pH is slow and cool. The page continues to talk about pH. This is the acidic and alkaline chapter. And so later on, they are explaining a doctor experiencing such success with sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate is highly alkaline. Its presence is found in the lining of the stomach to neutralize any acid that might penetrate the mucous lining. The pancreas is another organ that naturally produces sodium bicarbonate. The release happens in response to the acidic state of the food leaving the stomach and entering the duodenum. In both cases, the sodium bicarbonate is used primarily as an alkalizer. So for me, after reading both of those sections, it really stood out to me and brought me back to a memory. I was at the pelvic floor therapist and we were talking about lichen sclerosus and like what could cause lichen sclerosus, all these things. And she suggested I look into lichen sclerosus and pH, and she said, I bet it has something to do with the body being too acidic. We had been talking about Ayurveda and she was treating something and the body being too acidic. And so like I kind of brush it off, like we were mostly talking about Ayurveda. But after reading this, it was like, oh my goodness, like she suggested I look into the link between lichen sclerosus and an acidic pH. And this book just like re-sparked that in me. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to share this, because I do think there is a huge link between lichen sclerosus and having acidic pH and fungus. And then going off of that, I have recently been going to a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner actually for eyesight. But we were talking about that my symptoms in the past, 'cause I talked to her about like my history of lichen sclerosus, and then my current symptoms of like with the eye trouble is that I have always seemed to have like the fast, speedy, like exactly what they said at the beginning of the page of it being hot and fast. She was saying that I had hot and fast symptoms, and that made me realize she was actually telling me I had a very acidic body or like environment within my body. So just fascinating, like the link between our acidity and then our symptoms that result. And so for me, that just kind of tied it all together. My history of lichen sclerosus, like the history of the symptoms of having an acidic environment within my body, and then learning about how fungus creates these acidic environments and thrives in these environments, relating back to lichen sclerosus and my research. And then when you tie it back to 2 videos ago when we learned from the Help I Have Lichen Sclerosus book, using borax to help with symptoms and is really relieving during a flare. And it makes me think, okay, we just learned that borax is one of the most alkaline substances and we can actually eat it. So that is directly correlating to having relief from lichen sclerosus because you're alkalizing your body. And you can take it orally, which you should definitely do your research. I would get the Help I Have Lichen Sclerosus book and like follow their protocol. I don't know a lot about like taking it because they also suggest taking it with magnesium. But so if you're taking it internally and you're alkalizing your body, you're prohibiting fungus growth. And then when you also do the borax baths or soaks, you are directly like affecting that area that is bothering you, like within the flare, and alkalizing that area. So is it because there's fungus present? Like, I don't know. And also a little while ago in the book when we were talking about Dr. White's research and how fungus can store dormant in the body for long periods of time. And it's when it's given that environment that it thrives in is when it comes out of dormancy. That also reminds me of when you go in remission with lichen sclerosus, you can have multiple years where you're not having any symptoms, but then like randomly a flare might come up, and that could be associated with diet or stress or like those key things that he said could bring like fungus out of dormancy are also the key things that can trigger lichen sclerosus. So I do think there is a big connection here between the fungus, acidity, like alkalizing your body for relief. I feel like there's so much here and like to uncover, and I don't know it all. I love like having this platform where we can research. I view it as researching together. And so if you know anything or come across something, please share it in the comments so that we can all like continue this research together and hopefully heal our bodies and bring relief long term. I think that this is all possible. And I think part of this will be taking a step back into how we view our bodies, viewing it as a whole, that something like so small can be like in one part of your body, it could be triggering like the symptoms somewhere else, or just like I don't really know. I just think that there is so much to uncover and that we can all do it together. So continuing back on the chapter of acid and alkaline balance, she goes in depth into what are great alkalizers. So on 84, she says green vegetables and grasses are excellent sources of alkaline salts that are antifungal. The greener, the better. The green juice extract from plants is not only one of the most alkalizing foods there is, but it is also a potent tissue and blood cleanser. Wow, like what a beautiful world we live in where everything we need is like in the foods that we can eat, and that we can heal our bodies through eating the proper food and creating that proper environment within our body. She goes, I really like actually the chart on page 86 and 87. I don't know if you'll be able to see it so well, but she breaks down like what are the most acidic foods and alkaline. So up here on the most acidic, she has like red meat, wine, caffeine, sugar, eggs, even honey actually, bread, pasta, like those are all really hard things to avoid, at least for me. And then down here on the alkaline, there are berries, fruits, vegetables. And so this actually had me really considering the current trends with food, you know, like the carnivore diet. Some people are having like great success, and I think that's awesome. But is that creating a more acidic environment because you're eating only the acidic foods? I don't know. This chapter really had me questioning the way even my family eats, because we eat a lot of animal products like cheese and like raw milk, butter, meat. We also love our veggies and our fruit, but it made me wonder, like, would it be best to go more alkaline, especially like knowing that lichen sclerosus is like linked genetically through family lines, like to prevent that. I don't know. As a mama, it's just got me like thinking what would be the best choice for my family. And I think it's great that like we can do this research and choose the best for ourselves. Okay, let's continue on. Okay, I was actually just looking at my notes on things I wanted to uncover, but I did think it was interesting. The acidic foods are also foods that if you take them away while you're having a flare, I have noticed, at least for myself in the past, that if I stop the gluten, the coffee, the sugar, I would get relief in my symptoms right away. So yeah, that's just another little tidbit to consider. So that is all I'm going to talk about this book, like relating it to lichen sclerosus. But I think there was a lot in there that ties it all together. Let me know what you think. And again, I really love Barbra O'Neill's work. She's a big role model of mine. And the book, Self-Heal by Design, is the one that we're going over. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.